All right, guys, let's look at the student task statement number 3 called using tape diagrams. All right, it says for number 1, it wants us to match each situation to a diagram. Be prepared to explain your reasoning. Number 2 is asking us to draw a diagram to represent these situations. All right, so let's look at part A. It says, compare with last year's strawberry harvest. This year's strawberry harvest is a 25% increase. Okay, so what I want you guys to do at home is I want you guys to write next to your notes a 25% increase, so plus 25%. Okay, because it's an increase. Now, if they use the keywords increase, I'll use green. If it use decrease, I'll use red. Okay, so I'm looking for a 25% increase. Okay, so which diagram is showing a 25% increase? Would it be diagram A, which is showing that last year was 100%, this year it got added 25%, or would it be B, last year was 100% and this year it looked like that 25% is part of that 100%? If you guess diagram A, you are absolutely correct. So I'm going to draw an arrow connecting that to A. If you guys want to write in your notes on the side, which that probably be the most organized way, putting diagram A next to it, that is totally fine with me. Okay. Now let's look at number 2. It says, or part B, it says this year's blueberry festival harvest I'm thinking about the strawberry festival, but this year's blueberry harvest is 75% of last year. Okay, so it didn't say whether it was a decrease or an increase, but I'm going to annotate that still in green. Well, I'm going to annotate it in red. So this is 75% of last year. If it's a 75% of last year, that means that's a 25% decrease. Okay, that is a 25% decrease, basically. And if I had to look at which diagram will model that, that would be diagram B. Why? Because if this is this year's, and that's 25%, well, 25% minus 100 minus 25% would in fact be 75%. So it actually would be diagram B. So I'm going to write that in black to the side, diagram. Oh, let me erase that because I'm writing on the wrong one. You guys should have told me. Just kidding. Diagram B. All right, so for part C, it says compare with this year's peach harvest decreased 25%. So this is another example of where they're showing that 20 is less than 25%. These people had not so good of an outcome compared to last year. So this would be diagram B. And I'm still going to show my annotations, which is a 25% decrease, which would be B. They said this year's plum harvest is 125% of last year's plum harvest. If it didn't technically say that it was a 25% increase, but look at the original amount compared to this year. If I had to do 100, do that in green, 100 plus 25, it would be 125%. Okay, so I'm going to underline that, and that will be diagram A. Okay, now moving on to part 2, it says draw a diagram to represent these situations. It says the number of ducks living at the pond increased by 40%. So it said they had an increase of 40%, and it said the number of ducks. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a diagram representing the number of ducks. And this is for question A. And the number of ducks, this is the original amount. Okay. And then now we want to do the increase, which the increase will be, we want to make the tape diagram the same. And I'm going to write that increase in green. So increase by 40%. And I want to draw a diagram where it's showing a piece that's 40%. Now, keep in mind, even though like we don't know exact numbers, we don't want to draw the piece to where it's equal to the tape diagram. We want to draw a nice little chunk that could possibly represent 40%. I'm going to highlight in blue to keep the same theme as the book. And we're going to let that represent 40%. I wanted to do something that was a little less than half of the tape diagram that I drew, but I didn't want to do a piece, an added piece that was the same size. Okay, so hopefully you guys understand my concept of creating these tape diagrams. Okay, now I'm going to do part B, which is the number of mosquitoes decreased by 80%. Okay, so we're going to let the first original amount be the number of mosquitoes and we're going to draw a tape diagram. This is the original amount. Okay, so the second tape diagram will be the same amount, and I'm going to draw an arrow saying this is going to show the decrease by 80%. Okay, so think about 80%. 80% is almost all of the tape diagram, but not the whole thing. So I'm going to draw a line right here indicating 80%. I'm going to highlight it. Okay. And then I'm going to put this annotation, 80%. Okay. So did you guys' tape diagrams look like mine's? All right. So if you have any questions about tape diagrams and how to represent the portions of, how did I estimate, the size of each unit or each piece of my tape diagram, please feel free to visit your manager's Google Meet session and make sure you visit your session before answering these questions in your Google Classroom assignments. All right, guys, I'll see you guys in the next problem.